a little bit of this going on here, I think, around this whole debate about gender, because Scott's exactly right in that clip you just showed, that there's no strong evidence that young men are less supportive of gender equality than they were, or than older men. I just did my own analysis of the General Social Survey with Alan Downey, and that asks a bunch of questions like female president, female boss, society would be better if women stayed in the home and men did the earnings. These questions I've been asking for decades. And the trend towards gender equality on those views continues, including among young men, right? And so I don't see any strong evidence that there's this sort of shift against gender equality. And so that's why the framing is correct, I think, that it's less young men especially becoming enthused by a reactionary anti-female agenda. I don't see any evidence of that in any serious numbers. Of course, online and right. What I actually think is closer to the truth is that a lot of these young men just feel a bit politically homeless now. They don't feel that welcome on the left. That's for sure. And that's been really growing over the last few years. And given some of the stuff we've been talking about, I don't think that's crazy, right? They get a lot of sense of like they're the problem, not that they have problems. They know what not to do, but they don't know what to do. And they're kind of over it, is my sense of it. But they're not stampeding over to some sort of, massively reactionary turn back to the 50s agenda. They're not. They're just like, that means their votes are up for grabs now in a way that they were not previously.
That was the most interesting thing that I learned when Dan came on the show. People should go back and listen to that episode. Yeah. It was really fascinating.
Yeah, he's fantastic, I think.
And what he taught me was that men, especially young men, are more likely than any other cohort to say that no particular political issue is important to them.
Yeah.
So it's very much just checking out.
Disengagement.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not going left or right. It's going back.
Yeah,
like this way of it. So you've used a term a couple of times today, and so have I, this sort of zero-sum view of empathy. Just dig into that a little bit for me, sort of how you think of it and conceptualize it.
Yeah, and of course, gender is only one example where this can happen. You can see it around immigration and various other issues. But the basic idea that like for one group to do better, another group has to do worse. Right? There's only so much of something to go around, whether that's money or empathy or political capital or whatever, right? And so what that means is that if I successfully convince you that we should spend more time and energy and political capital and invest on boys and men, that means by definition, we're not going to be spending as much time kind of caring about women and girls, right? And that fear that it's zero sum means that if you're on the side that stands to potentially lose out, then of course you're going to oppose moving toward, even if you agree with my stats, even if you agree with everything that I've been saying here, you're like, yeah, but there's still so much more to do for women and girls that we just can't be distracted from that, right? And there's only so much to go around. In fact, I did an interview with Ezra Klein from the New York Times, and he reposted it about a month ago. And in that, he said there is this sort of feeling that people have that there's only so much empathy to go around, right? And so if we start wasting some of it on the guys, there'll be less for the women. He's like, but that's not how empathy works. Yeah. Right? It's like saying to a parent who's considering having a second child, it's like, well, should you do that? Because you've only
take some love away from the first one.
Do you really want to love the first one 50% less? Right? It's as absurd as that. But it does play into this debate quite strongly, where people genuinely fear that if you do pay more attention, you pile on the gas a little bit around the boys and men's issues, which I believe you should, that means doing less for women and girls. And as a general proposition, that's just entirely false. We're perfectly capable of doing both.
I had a chat with Christine Ember, who wrote that,
she's on my board, by the way.
Is she really?
Yeah, she's
shit hot. I mean, she's got to be writing a book off the back of that thing, surely. She should do. If she's not, she should go and do it, because she was great, and I loved the conversation with her. Yeah, so I wrote a little essay after that. So I'm going to read you this short diatribe about the zero-sum view of empathy. As a caveat, this is part of my rant budget from 18 months ago, okay?
All right.
So it may not be...
So we can't claim it against your rant budget from today.
I've already paid it.
I've
already paid it. This was... the IRS took this off last year.
Got it.
Publicly trying to work out why men are struggling is largely a thankless task. This is a zero-sum view of empathy. There is an assumption that any attention paid toward men takes it away from women or some other minority group who is more deserving. After all, haven't men had it good for long enough? Maybe they should just suck it up for a while. But empathy does not work this way. It's not a limited resource. Recognizing the plights of men does not ignore the plights of women. And ultimately, women end up suffering in any case, as it's this increasing cohort of apathetic, checked out, and resentful men who contribute to the exact lack of eligible partners that women say they're struggling with. Women posting boo-hoo, poor patriarchy, sad, whilst also complaining where are all of the good men at, is mating logic seppuku. If one sex loses, both sexes lose. Male blame is something else I see. A common question is, why don't men just do better? Surely they can try harder in school, employment, and health. Chop, chop, men, hurry up and stop being so useless. Well, no other group is told, when they suffer with poor performance or accolades in the real world, that they should just pull themselves up by their bootstraps. We don't tell any other group to talk about their problems. Instead, we spend billions in taxpayer money and private charity to set up committees, departments, campaigns, and funds to solve the problem. In simple terms, if a woman has a problem, we ask, what can we do to fix society? If a man has a problem, we ask, what can men do to fix themselves? It's a blatant double standard, and people who are unwilling to admit to any structural disadvantages faced by men are standing in the way of us solving the problems that are hurting men and also the potential wives that they should be viable for. The problems are not in men's heads, but out there in society. We should not gaslight men into thinking they can solve these problems by being less masculine. If the patriarchy is so powerful, why aren't men flourishing more? As Christine Ember says, many young men feel their difficulties are often dismissed out of hand as whining from a patriarchy that they do not feel a part of. Just because you're in the majority does not mean that you don't need support. In this regard, modern men are being made to pay for the sins and advantages that their fathers and grandfathers enjoyed.
I'm remembering that. I read that, Chris.
Good. Very good.
I think after you, because you did, I also listened to your conversation with Christine, and we're mutual fans of hers. I would just say, in there you said like being told men that need to be less masculine. I'd also say that from the other side they get like you need to be more masculine. Yeah. But either way, there's a strong agreement that it's like you're the problem, right? You're either not man enough or too manly, right? But like, and maybe depending on which day it is, you listen to somebody else. Like on Tuesday, your problem is that you're too masculine, and then on Wednesday it's that you're not masculine enough, and on Thursday you're too masculine. Yeah. So these poor men were like pinballs, right? Between like depending on which podcast we've listened to or like what we've read, right?
Which stat was
but in a sense that's like a second order problem. The first order problem is that we're positioning it as about you and about you as an individual. And one of the things that I probably have found maybe the most gratifying thing about my work is the number of people that have said, thank you for framing this as a kind of broader issue and not just a problem with me or my son or my brother, right? This sort of like, rather than saying kind of what's wrong with him, we can say, well, what's wrong with schools?